want to get to the bottom of it. I want to get to the heart of it with the issue of the day. And the thing that's so crazy about this issue right now is this whole thing of the US and all this messaging that Trump's got, the US taking over Canada. The thing that is so like cryptic about it for guys like you and me is that we're at a precipice now where what you taught me 11 years ago is happening, at least in my theory, because of the constitutional problem that you told all of us about back in 2014, that because the charter was never ratified, because of article whatever it was that gets you in that endless loop of until Quebec allows English in their schools, there's no charter.
There's no charter.
Which is so insane. But we're here now because Canada was never really a proper country. It's essentially the Hudson's Bay Company.
It is essentially the Hudson Bay Company, and whoever is the holder of that document, the Hudson Bay Charter. It's called something else officially, but that gives you the right to run a corporation as if it was a government. You would not know the difference for all practical things because they're allowed to make their own laws and enforce them. They're allowed to have armed forces, artillery, navy, courts. Think about that. Walmart is allowed to have its own court.
Yeah.
And the courts could hear subject matter to deal with the company, but they could also hear criminal and civil matters. So they were
Which
trained.
is so crazy because if Canada is a corporation like Walmart, which it is, to call the court is basically an oversight committee from a board of directors in a company.
Yeah.
Right?
They're going to win it almost every time.
Of course, because you're an employee of that corporation. And so what do you have? You have no rights. It's like, do you want to be part of that corporation or not? I'm just turning my light down. And so here we are now where Trump is basically signaling that he's going to incorporate Canada into the United States corporation and whatever that means. So what's the 30,000 foot view for you on what's going on right now with this?
Well, I would say that the most direct thing is they're buying the charter. It's a corporation. If Walmart wants to sell out, like they sell, and then another new owner has it. Like that's business. It's just straight up.
It's so straight up. I mean, it is far like what I see in some of the consulting work that I do with people is I'll say, and this is nothing new or controversial. Any lawyer will tell you this is that if you're a rich person and you own lots of land, the best way to own that land is in a corporation, in a holding company. And then when you sell the land to save yourself title transfer tax, you just appoint new directors to the company and then they take the company and the land.
Well, this is what the Hudson Bay Company is. If you read the charter, they were granted land, and it was vast. Any river that flowed into the Hudson Bay from its start, from where a river starts, any river flowing in there, that was their land. It went down into where the United States is now, and it covered pretty much almost all of eastern Canada, like Ontario, Quebecish, and down into southern Alberta, what is now southern Alberta. It was a massive amount of land. They had all the mineral rights. This is all in the charter.
Yeah.
They had they could run their forts. They could put cannons on their forts. It's all in there.
Mm-hmm.
You can have munitions. So these forts had artillery. This is Walmart, dude. And they had a full-on monopoly. So what happened was Victoria in the 1800s, so this ran for 200 years like that. And they had, and apparently they were pretty ruthless because they've got the power, they've got all the land, they've got, you had, if you wanted to put a canoe in the river, you had to buy a license, like on and on and on and on and on. And it was my way or the highway.
Yeah.
So, and it ran for 200 years. So Victoria formed the Dominion, taking there because there were some other provinces in the east that didn't weren't part of Rupert's Land, so they formed the Dominion basically to compete with this thing, like put it out of business, if you like,
Yeah.
force their hand. Part and read the preamble of the British North America Act. One of the main reasons was to acquire lands, but it doesn't say what lands. And one of the things that had was stipulated for this to happen is the railroad going in. They couldn't afford a railroad, but they had to put it in. So it bankrupted everybody. They got a railroad in so they could move goods faster than the Hudson Bay Company, and they forced the surrender basically of the Hudson Bay Charter the very next year, 1868. So it was like boom, boom, just follow the dots.
I know. And it's so, I've never even anybody really give me a theory on why they think Queen Victoria put in the Statute Law Revision Act and removed herself from the Dominion from the British Crown from assuming the Dominion after her death. Have you ever had any ever thoughts on why she did that?
That's because you're missing part of that same repeal. People just, I think, either can't see it or it's partly disguised. But the very first item on the schedule, it says remove the words that start with "be it therefore" to "same as follows." And if you don't like that can go right by you. But
No
what it
shit.
is it's the enacting clause.
Yeah, right.
It's the words that give the whole document any force and effect. So she removed those. In other words, the B&A Act is gone.
Is gone
Yeah.
after she dies.
So it doesn't matter about really. I think what removing Section 2 did was make sure that no king or queen could ever revive it, because all the rights pertaining to the British North America Act would pass to her successors and heirs. Well, now it doesn't, which is why in '82 they took the very same document, British North America Act, all the same words in there, and changed the name.
It's so sneaky. And why they would do that is it's hard to understand. It's almost like you'd spend a lifetime trying to answer those questions. But it brings us to where we are today, though, in that, okay, if the Dominion is gone, all there is a company with a charter to do business. What, and you said earlier, and it might have gone over people's heads, is that maybe Trump's just going to buy the charter because he can't really buy the land. How do you buy the land? Who gives it to you? Who sells it?
The land comes with the charter.
Land comes with the charter.
And a lot
Just
of
like
people
a
think, a lot of
corporation
people think,
having a
yeah,
land and a holding company.
I'm telling you, it, a lot of people think the land didn't go with the charter. But if you read the Rupert's Land Act, which was the terms of the surrender, it says all lands, all purported lands, like words like purported in there, all the authority and or purported authority. Because I'll tell you what, by this time, by the mid to 1800s during Victoria's reign, Hudson Bay Company was way out of their boundaries. In other words, they were on this side of the Rockies. They had no business being over here.
Right.
That wasn't the deal. This was all native land, and it still is. But they just came and just started opening up business. So
And
she took
so,
all that too. She took all the stuff that the way it's written, anything that you weren't supposed to have, I got that now too.
yeah. So where we are today then is there doesn't have to be any kind of vote from the people because if Walmart sold, let's say it's Jim Walton, who's the CEO of Walmart today. I don't know who it is or what, doesn't matter. If it's Jim Walton today, he sells the company. He doesn't go to the employees and say, hey, do you guys want to say in this? He doesn't care.
Nope.
The
Or the
company gets
customers.
sold, and they might not even know a new owner bought it because it wouldn't matter to them.
Exactly.
So is your opinion of if this goes down? Well, first of all, what do you think the likelihood of this going down is?
Very high. That I think that's like notice. And everybody got up in arms. And of course, you know, right away there's a hockey game, a hockey tournament that just
So
pops out
ridiculous.
of nowhere. And you know, the first game, I didn't watch any of it, but from what I understand, the very first game between Canada and U.S., a fight breaks out within 3 seconds. Like,
Yeah,
come on, that's kabuki theater, man. That's like, how could
it is.
yeah, like 3 days ago, we were all in the NHL, and you know, basically, you know, get making our living, and all of a sudden now there's this thing, this tournament with only a few teams, and we got a fight within 3 seconds. Like, come on,
And
man.
so, what do you think is the signaling coming in so hard because it's sort of a predictive programming thing, and they're kind of trying to seed that division?
Yes,
But why would the division get them there? Because is that going to kind of, is it like sort of nudging an aggressor? Like, come on, you want to fight, right? Because then if
yeah.
they want to make people want to fight, like what do you think's really going on there?
They always want us fighting, like no matter what move they make, they want us in some kind of turmoil. And even when they moved the Hudson Bay Company, when they formed the Dominion, and actually the Hudson Bay charter got surrendered, they didn't tell anybody. And there was a bunch of people who made their living based on the status quo, and now it's going to be different. Now we're all part of a dam. Why weren't we consulted? So there was actually an uprising called the Red River Uprising because they're like, no, 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 you don't get to just take our land because we had a deal with the Hudson Bay Company or whatever it was, right? So now that's all null and void, just like because Victoria said so.
Yeah.
So there was even in that time there was the people that didn't like it. There was people who didn't like the American Revolution. There was loyalists who went, "No, this is treason. We're not doing this," and they
And
moved
so
it.
do you think we're going to see that kind of thing? Because the thing that I find so interesting about all this is that you and I and a handful of other people have been talking about this constitutional problem and this sort of lack of sovereignty that Canadians have had forever. It almost seems to me like it could go two ways, but the US thing is just more likely. But the way I'd like it to go, if I could sort of wave my magic wand and all of a sudden wake everybody up, it'd be like everybody would wake up to the constitutional problem in the first place and say, well, hey, fuck, you're telling me you can just sell me with like an asset? And then that would wake people up to say, well, what is this?
Exactly,
But
but
do
too
you
late by
really?
that. Too late by then.
And so, sure, I would love for everybody to understand this, but I just go, because that would be a perfect case scenario is that people would clue in to be like, well, wait a second, if Trump can just buy us as a country, what does that say about the country? It says that it's
Not a,
nothing but business. Therefore, the man, the person, the whole rabbit hole, people wake up, but I sadly just don't see. I mean, there's 432 people in this stream. That's great. But, if that's any type of reflection of this information turning the tide, you know?
if this is a sale, because there could be other scenarios too. He could be actually trying to form a country under the United States, and this corporation they can do whatever they want with it. They maybe use it or not. The simplest thing would be a straight up sale, like right from whoever has the Hudson Bay Company is most likely Charles.
So, because isn't Trump going to meet Charles, or didn't he just meet him?
I'm not sure, but
That's what I heard.
that is the simplest, cleanest thing that would they would take over that charter. They could form Canada into the Republic or not, or just keep it going the same way with a new owner.
Right.
And it would get rid of the border.
Yeah.
Like there's
Which would benefit a lot of
a
Canadians.
lot of people. Like it's not gloom and doom. So the only way out of if it's a straight up sale, the only way out of this is to form a country. But like you said, people think we have a country now, and they're
You have been talking about this fucking thing forever, and it's crickets for the most part. I mean, not to discredit your work and the hard many hours you put into getting this message out, but I didn't hear any about this at the trucker convoy,
nope.
right?
And the trucker convoy is evidence. Everybody's going, hey, they just stomped all over the charter. Think about that.
Yeah.
What if the charter didn't exist? Did they stomp on anything? No, they didn't. That's how I looked at it. But if you think that that thing is there, then you have a cognitive bias. That's what I call it, and it's not the truth. You got to get to actually what's happening.
You
As
got to get to the bottom of
unsavory
it.
as it is,
Yep.
you've got to look at it and go, "Hey, this is what's happening." I think, and then
Yeah.
test it.
Yeah.
Don't go with your what you believe it is. Like you have the chance of being wrong.
So when we were bullshitting the other day, we were kind of riffing on all these different scenarios and the way all this can go and stuff. Because I think you agreed with me that if this happens, it is one big step towards the New World Order of being fully realized, because you've seen the Club of Rome map where it's the 10 regions of North America. There's 10 regions around the world, and North America basically is one region. So it's a big step, but when you look at the clown show that the Canadian government is it any worse than the US? Like, are liberals in Canada any worse than Biden? Because the thing I get from people, because I'm not advocating for this. Again, I just like, don't shoot the messenger. It's like, I just think it's most likely going to happen. And I try to look at upsides. So I'm not saying I want it,
No,
but you have to admit there would be some big benefits without having that border, especially when we feel the pain of like the tariffs that we're under right now. And so people get mad about that because then they'll say, well, yeah, it's Trump right now, but it could be the Democrats in 4 years. But it's like, the way I see it is, yeah, but you had Democrats for the last 4 years, but you still had your Second Amendment. That's anything better than we have in Canada.
absolutely. We have
The,
nothing
and
here.
we have nothing, because even if that Constitution, and you can debate the Constitution in the US too as being another dog and pony show that only was meant something for a select group of people, whatever. But the fact of the matter is, Americans are a lot more armed than Canadians in general.
And it's the Second Amendment that allows that, and they don't seem to be able to reverse that. So as much as they try. So, uh, you know, uh, I'll just share this. I'll share that there's one little document that will send you down the rabbit hole, and this is the document that the Queen came over from England and
You want to
signed.
share it?
Yeah, I can share it.
You should be able to. You're your host.
Screen two.
Hit that shit. There you go.
So this is the proclamation of the Constitution Act that everybody thinks exists, 1982, which also includes the charter. You gotta, so it's three things. So here it is. This, all the whereas statements, like the preamble, why we're doing this, and blah 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 blah. And then here are the words that give this whole thing any force and effect. Now know you that we, which means her, by and with the advice of our Privy Council for Canada, do by this our proclamation, her, declare that the Constitution Act 1982 shall come into force on the 7th day of April in the year of our Lord 1982. That's that day. That's what that sentence is. Now there's a comma
Subject to 59.
in that sentence. Like if you took, it's this. There's a subject before this will come into force.
It's like a subject on the terms of your mortgage, right? You have to remove the subjects before the deal goes through. So and until subjects are removed, the deal doesn't
Go
close.
through exactly. So this, without getting into detail on it, this is, like Curtis said, Quebec, it has to do with Quebec. And it has to do with Quebec signing off where people can have their kids taught in English. Quebec wasn't going to sign it back then. That was when René Lévesque was in power, and they have not signed it to this day, 40 years later.
So that begs a question. If this goes down, is Quebec out?
Everybody's out. Well, Quebec,
No,
no,
but
because
well, if
Quebec is
everybody's
part
out,
of.
then what do we have?
If it's a sale of the Hudson Bay Charter, and based on the terms of surrender to Victoria, because you got to add that in because they took more land, and she, with clever wording, said, "I'm taking all the purported authority and all the purported lands and all the stuff you weren't supposed to have, but I'm taking it." So if you add all that in, then Quebec is in. The only places that might not be in are um, Nova Scotia, New Brunswick, those two, because those provinces pre-existed, and then there was Upper and Lower Canada, but those are not don't exist anymore. It's Quebec and
What
Ontario.
what about BC with all the unceded territory?
BC was never a part of it, except she captured it because of the purported word, and then they formed British Columbia. And the timing of this is right when Billy Barker found gold in Quesnel. It's like, come on. So they formed the province. The same guy who was running the Hudson Bay, I think his last name was Douglas, the same governor of the Hudson Bay Company out here in BC was now the governor of the province. Business as usual, different names, but like, and this happened on a federal scale as well. When they dissolved the Hudson Bay Company, supposedly, a lot of the governors were just became governors of the now Dominion or country. It's all just sleight of hand, smoke and mirrors, calling it a dog when it's a dog.
It's so fascinating. I mean, it's fascinating, terrifying, and exciting at the same time. Because I could see, yeah, I don't like one step towards the New World Order. However, in my navigating the matrix, what I've started to learn to do is see the difference between a tide and a wave. So we're all in water and commerce, right? And you're out on the ocean in your little boat, and in order to navigate the waves that are coming at you, you got to turn your boat in the right direction, right? Because you got to take the wave straight on. But there's nothing you can do with just that little boat. Say you're a boat with oars. There's nothing you can do about the wind, and there's nothing you can do about the jet streams in the ocean. But you can navigate the waves. And so, in a way, that's how I'm just trying to look at this practically. Is, do I like it? And in a perfect world, I would rather just have proper Canadian sovereignty, and then we form the country that we should have formed in 1982 or post 1982 when all this was coming out, or even when Walter
1931.
31, yeah, when Walter Cool, it was in, I believe it was 1972 or something like that, when Walter Cool wrote his letter to René Lévesque and said, "Hey, buddy, you guys are already sovereign.
Yeah.
You don't need to do any of this dog and pony show."
Nope.
But he didn't listen, because are these guys all in on it? Do they go, yeah, let's just kind of keep this thing going because it's a nice little racket for us, right?
And it kept going for they tried twice to actually get Quebec to sign off. They tried twice, Meech Lake Accord and Charlottetown Accord. They actually tried. They thought they could do this. Like 1982, we'll sign this. Okay, as soon as we get this all settled up, we're going to actually negotiate. We're going to hammer this out, and Quebec's going to sign. Well, they didn't.
Yeah.
And so now, and then they just kind of let it go, and then it became, it's become a big problem if to fix this at this point.
I know.
because there's a lot of problems. Like a lot of people have lost things, been locked up based on certain laws, and if those weren't proper, then well, how do we fix this? Canada is a mess, and this is just on this subject. We still have the native problems. Like
Big time.
stuff
So
was stolen, and
who,
like on and on and
but
on.
so that's the thing that's crazy about it is because you could rationalize probably for the average. My theory on it is that the Canadians that will benefit will be the people that don't have a lot of debt tied to real estate. Because real estate, I mean, who's going to buy a property in Lower Mainland for 1.5 million for a fixer upper when you can go right across the border and buy the same property for like a third of the cost, literally? So that's going to screw Canadian equity real estate potentially. I don't know for sure, but that's my theory. But for a lot of people who are just kind of like doing whatever, they'll just be like, well, I'll just go to the US now because there's so many more economic opportunities down there. There's so many more resources. But then even by staying here, you'll still benefit because if we're under the US economy, we get access to their economy, right? Stuff's
Yeah.
overall more affordable in the US because their purchasing power, right?
So there's it's not all down, like it's not all negative stuff. So, and that said, a lot of people could move here from there, and you can have your opinions on that, but things will expand. Like,
I wonder if there could be a little bit of a period of a gravy train that this kind of brings in a way. And I wonder if the game Trump is playing is, I'm going to make these fuckers suffer for a little while so they really want the deal.
well, maybe, but here's the thing about what we said at the beginning is get in on what's actually happening. Don't try and pretend and wave a flag and say, I'm not buying stuff from Walmart. That's not going to change anything. We either form a country like the Statute of Westminster said we could, instead of the thing that Trudeau did, in '82, just try to let's just patch up the B&A Act and pretend it was always here the whole time. Well, it wasn't. And
Yeah.
they even backdated the name all the way back to 1867. So 2 generations from now, you won't hear about the B&A Act. It will be erased from history. They'll make it look like this thing was continuously always here. You can see it
What do you,
happening.
yeah. Well, so what do you think if this kind of thing goes down? I mean, this is now we're taking shots in the dark. We're kind of guessing, but we've covered some pretty interesting historical points that illustrate how this could just happen really quickly. And perhaps all this political bullshit that's in the media. Like I went into my mom's house the other day. She's watching CBC and it's like, it's Orange Man bad season again. It's just fucking insane. They're just pumping it so hard. Do you think that Canada would be one state, or do you think that they would kind of redraw the lines?
I think they would want to redraw the lines, maybe not right away, but yeah, it would be a pretty large state.
Be a pretty big state. Like it doesn't make sense logistically.
No, because the laws and everything. There's like the way that Americans work is, there's state law and then there's federal law and there's county law and municipal law. So I think it would be a little bit much to have it something this vast as one state.
Yeah, and most Canadians, like 90% of Canadians, live within 100 miles of the U.S. border.
Exactly. Yeah. And and if you think about that, if this is coming, would you want to sort of take advantage of the shift in equity? Like you said, Curtis, I can tell you, like, I don't know how many people know about this place called Point Roberts, but
Yeah,
it's 5 square miles that got cut off from the rest of the United States.
I
And
know it's so weird on the map because it's right in the Lower Mainland, and what a pain in the ass to live there. Have to go through Canada every time to go shopping, basically.
yeah. So but that said, this is all, like pretty close to waterfront. There's quite a bit of waterfront there, but it's at a third or a quarter of the price of right next door. Like
I know
if
it's
you
a
go
joke.
down Avenue Zero, it's Canada on one side and like
And there's no fence.
No.
I've walked across there many times, just for shits and giggles. Like, hey, look, I'm walking into the U.S. Yeah,
Yeah. So the property on this side of the road is like 4 times the amount of property on this side of the road.
literally, because of the Lower Mainland. Yeah, doesn't make any sense.
So depending on where things wash out, you could take advantage of that balancing because it's going to rebalance.
Yeah, yeah, and there could
You
be
could
some.
and you could avoid, like you said, if you got this property that's like 4 million, you know it's going to drop to 1. Get out now. That's based on the truth. Instead of standing there with a flag.
Yeah, the world as it is, or the world as it ought to be. And to
Exactly.
me, it's the same dichotomy of: do you want justice or do you want equity? Do you want to be right or do you want to fucking win?
Yeah,
Right?
that's it.
We can rah, I'm not the man, I'm not the person, I'm the man. You played the name game for how many years and got railroaded, right? And so it's as the world as it ought to be or the world as it is. I mean, that's all we're saying. This is such a hot subject. Like, I'm even looking in the comments, like there's people that are really mad at me for talking about this stuff. Like, you fucking traitor and all that. Traitor of what? There was never anything anyways.
No.
Traitor of what? A flag?
I'm sorry if you read the proclamation, which forms Canada, apparently forms Canada as it is right now. The subject in the very words that forms it has not been satisfied. Period.
Yeah.
Doesn't matter whether you like it or not.
Yeah.
And this is the point. We were duped. So don't get mad at Curtis. Don't get mad at me. I'm just telling you, this is what's happened. I don't like it either, but this is what's happened. You got to deal with what is, not what you think it's supposed to be, or what you think
Yeah.
what you think it should be, or anything like that. This is what is.
And do you want to catch? So it's like, I love the metaphors to admiralty and maritime, because they make a lot of sense. There's so much interesting when you watch water move. You know, I've had transcendent moments watching rivers move, and I figure out things about the law. And there's so much about that. What is the water? You know, I believe it's our energy, it's our flow, it's our force, and they manipulate that. And there's universal principles that work with water in that it follows the path of least resistance and goes to the lowest point, you know? And we have to be like that, because if you see these things moving, it's like, hey, there's a big wave coming. Do you want to catch the wave or do you want to get swallowed by the wave?
Exactly. You can see, you can stand there and talk about the dam. No, the dam could never break while the water's coming through it. And no, didn't break. You got to deal with what is. And this is what is. You can see it simply in this proclamation. That is the only thing that gives what we now think is Canada any validity. It's that document right there. It's like 8 paragraphs, 2 pages.
Yeah.
Actually, on 1 page on the signing. But that's it. There is nothing else. They couldn't pass this thing in 1982 in Parliament because the document they're passing forms Parliament. And the legislatures, without the British North America Act, there was no Parliament. So they were just trying to patch this thing up. Like, that's it. Stick some gum on it.
Yeah.
Like, it was the wrong thing to do. They should have just owned up. Okay, we got a problem. We were duped by some lady a couple of 100 years ago. We just now have discovered this, and a few people I think knew. Here's what we need to do. When you think about it, 1931, for full disclosure, so that we can stand before God and say, yeah, we kind of stole their land, but we gave it back to them as long as they 1931. Y'all can form a country if you want.
And nobody did.
Nobody did.
Nobody did. And then we had those whistleblowers, Russell Rogers, later Walter Cool. There was some other ones in there along the way that were saying, hey, has anybody read the terms of service here? Because who reads the fucking terms of service. You
You just
sign up for a
click.
software program, it's got 200 pages of terms of service. You didn't read it, you signed it.
Exactly.
And that's how they get us every time, because either you signed it without reading it or you agreed tacitly because you never responded.
Exactly. And
They gave you notice.
if you're standing there with a little flag that you got at Canadian Tire, that's not doing anything.
No.
It really isn't. I'm not trying to belittle anybody, but that's not what's needed. If you don't want Orange Man or whatever it is coming in here and forming an actual government, then form one.
But Cal, what would you say to be devil's advocate? What would you say to, well, the US is a corporation under the City of London, and its commercial paper system goes all the way up there. There's a lot of holes in the Constitution and how it doesn't have an unratifying issue like Canada's does, but it is all commerce at the end of the day, and people aren't really winning in the system on constitutional challenges. They're winning more on UCC and commerce, right?
That's what I said. But the republic is not gone.
No, you're right, because there's still an all cap state, and there's still a title case state.
Yep.
That's a fact.
Exactly. So you don't know where this is all going, but
Well, that's the thing that's interesting is that what happens to Canada? Does Canada only become in DC because it's already on 501 Pennsylvania Avenue?
yeah,
And that's all it is. So is the Canada portion totally de facto and only de facto, where the US is de facto and de jure?
yep. The republic is there. It's just dormant because nobody's really operating in it. But even Orange Man could change that. You don't know what's coming.
No, we don't.
So
Yeah.
this all could be a much better thing than you actually think because your TV is telling you, oh, this is
Exactly.
bad.
The
Look
thing, yeah.
This is what we all love hockey. Yeah, see, as soon as you see an American, just start punching.
Sports ball. Fucking sports ball, man.
Forget the puck. Forget the puck. Yeah, forget the puck.
So fucking retarded.
As soon as you see that puck drop your gloves and let's go. That's what they planted in our
That's
heads.
the mentality. See, the thing that I actually like the most about this idea is Americans. I've always been an American at heart. Like the thing that it's where I got everything. My business and everything I've achieved in my business is all thanks to Americans for the most part. Yeah, Canadians have supported me, but there's 10 times, 15 times the amount of people in the US. And so it's a bigger market. And I've always admired the American spirit. Like I had posters on my wall when I was a little kid, like Americana, like all that kind of shit. Is that my thinking is like trying to pick, okay, what's the upside in this? I go, well, all these really switched on American patriots that we hang out with, you and I have been traveling around the world for years. We hang out with these people. They're the vast majority of truthers I know are in the US.
Yep.
Just by number, right? Yeah. Maybe not by ratio, but by number. I go like, well, fuck. That's kind of cool. The thing I can't really understand where I think it could go, like I like to speculate on it. I've been thinking about this nonstop for months now, is that what happens to our title? Because in Canada, we have legal and equitable title, right? Crown says they hold the legal title, which is the actual ownership, and then the property owner, like me on my property, equitable title. What happens to the title? What do you think about that?
I don't know because I know where your property is approximately. It's on the west side of the Rockies. The Crown it's not supposed to have anything.
It's not in there.
No.
In the definition of province in the Interpretations Act, it says includes none of it, Northwest Territories and fucking Yukon.
Yeah. I know. It's because they didn't do things properly back then. And then the Hudson Bay Company comes in, they get a vast amount of land, and what do? And they were told, don't go into British Columbia. What did they do? Go into British Columbia, set up a fort. And then the Americans started coming up because of the gold rush. There was more Americans in that region.
Yes.
And it was lawless. because there was no European
BC
thing going.
especially. Did you ever in the 90s, did you ever watch that show Gold Trails and Ghost Towns?
No, but
Do you
oh,
remember that
I
show?
remember the show you're talking about.
It was so cool. It was all about the stuff that was going on in the mining towns and the boom. And it was the fucking Wild West. And these towns, they were their own sort of autonomous zones, and the towns would compete with each other. And it's far out. But in a way, we're like, are we going back to that? Are we going back to some kind of Wild West? Or I don't know, man. It's
I don't know if I would want to live under that. I mean, I guess if you're
no, not really. No.
but they brought Begbie over to straighten that out, and he hung a few people, and then that everybody kind of whoa, okay, yeah, I guess we gotta you know wear clothes and not act so like there's no consequences to anything.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that's why he came here, and he hung a few people all the way up the province, and known as the hanging judge. I don't think he hung as many people as the lore says, but there was nobody being hung before that. So yeah, all of that, when you go to a hockey game here, a football game, they gotta give tribute, to because they weren't supposed to be here. There's no legal or lawful backing for anybody except an indigenous person to live here and own and property. But they didn't even care about owning property. It wasn't their thing.
No, it wasn't even in their dialect. And what are I mean, it's so sad what's happened to the indigenous cultures, but what are they now? I mean, in the pursuit of the information we've had, we've probably, I know you have and I have, met some pretty switched on, hereditary chiefs and stuff like that who fucking know this stuff. That's
Yeah.
some of the deepest stuff that I've learned is from some guys like that. But by and large, I mean, going to the reserves and stuff, pretty depressing around BC. I've been to many of them, and then like, what's left? I guess there's more left than what the Americans did to their natives, though.
They took a straight on, let's just wipe them out approach. Here it was a little more, and it's still going on, but it's a lot more insidious, I think,
It is.
with the residential schools and some things, very unsavory things that happened and are still happening to a certain degree
Yeah.
to get rid of those people because from what I hear there is an agreement. I've never seen it, but there's a 60-40 split if you're a so-called Indian. So they've turned them into status Indians, which means they're not Indians, and did all these things to try and get them out of that agreement.
Well, and then the only way, if you read the Indian Act, it's pretty brutal, but the only way they can get their benefits is if they live on the reserve,
Yeah.
right? And who wants to live on the reserve? It sucks. You can't sell property. It's communism essentially on the reserve. It's more communist than Canada, that's for sure.
Yeah. I mean, there are some reserves that are nice, but
Yeah, for sure. Few and far between.
yeah.
Like I'd like to see more of those, frankly, because in my tree planting days, I toured all over the province. I've worked in Ontario, BC, Alberta, and Quebec. Anytime I'd been to reserves, it was pretty rough.
Yeah.
But I've seen some in the US that are actually quite all right as far as how they managed. There's some success stories out there, but
Yeah. Not many.
not many. It's pretty bleak. And so, I mean, but you know what? Is the struggle of the natives that much different than the struggle of the common man who's been duped their entire life either, though? I don't know if it is.
It's not.
We're all
Yes.
fucking slaves in this system to some degree, right?
Absolutely.
We could come together on that.
It's like, in the South there were the field slaves and there were the house slaves.
Right. Pick your poison.
Well, I mean, one is a little better that, seemingly a little more comfortable.
A house slave probably had it a little bit more comfortable, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
But you're still not free. You're indentured for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Like I wonder in this whole thing if we can look at it for what it is without the emotions and then realize that there's some pretty big economic opportunities. There's some pretty big cultural opportunities to basically come together with other American patriots that share our values and views. I mean, would we get the
Or
benefits? I don't know.
or we can form a country.
Or we
But
could form a country.
don't think that there's a country and we need to protect it in some way because it's not here. It
But
doesn't.
isn't that the problem? Because all
Yes,
these people that are getting really upset about rah rah Canada, how dare you? It's like, Canada what?
there isn't one. It's a
There never.
corporation. It's a complete corporation
So
operating
you're
for the
fighting for a
Hudson.
business that you're an employee in. You're a Walmart employee fighting for a change in the board of directors.
Yep, that's
Good
it.
luck.
That's it. So, and just so you know, under the Hudson Bay Charter, they were allowed to have their own seal, and they were allowed to change their name, and they could change the seal. Put two and two together. All they did was change it from the Hudson Bay Company to Canada and change the seal.
Well, it's not much different than the Federal Reserve being federal.
Yeah, exactly.
Right?
But this was right in the charter. They were allowed to do this. So you got to look at it. You've got to read these documents and you've got to see, connect some dots, and you'll see that we've been duped for long before any of us were ever born.
Big time. And so but then that begs the question is it all bad to go into commerce if that's the way it's always been done?
If you go into commerce and you learn it, you can prevail in there because it has self-balancing, self-correcting principles. But if
And that's
one party,
equity. That's part of what equity is.
in
Those principles, right?
in my opinion, equity is actually law merchant. They're just
Yes.
yeah. So
It's the foundation of law merchant.
I would say law merchant is the thing, and now they just called something else equity. But anyway, it doesn't matter,
Yeah.
which came first. But if you can learn it to a certain degree, it's like a shotgun clause,
In a mergers and acquisitions deal.
exactly. So do you want to take that chance and try and buy the other guy out, or because it can backfire on you? Well,
Yeah.
law merchant, it has those built in almost everywhere. So if you take advantage of somebody else, it's going to double down on you. So you just never did that to another merchant. There was the honor amongst thieves. What they
Right.
did is turned us all into merchants with the birth certificate and then
Yeah.
the SIN number, but didn't teach us how to actually operate as merchants.
Well, because the thing is, like, when you go down into what is it, the matrix, and what are we in it? Our birth certificates essentially are a form of security, right? You're bonded into this thing, and there's a monetary value, and that's how they borrow money. Is they say, "Hey, look, I got all these suckers that are going to work and pay the interest. What will you loan me today?" Right? That's the asset. Your birth certificate, right?
Yep.
They've essentially got us in this sort of agent to a trustee position, right? To do commerce. You just have this fiduciary duty to do all the things you're supposed to do. You sign up for the SIN number, there's fiduciary duties, right? Your mom signed up for the birth certificate, there's fiduciary duties. You signed up for whatever, you got a T4 general for whatever it is. Could we not hypothetically, if we wanted to change the system but use the framework, could we not just essentially appoint all trustees to beneficiaries?
Well, I think we're all beneficiaries anyway, and there's a trustee
But as a birthright, but they've got us mixed into a trustee position where we're having to
well,
do all this bullshit.
well, kind of. It's almost like they put the debts on you, on your person, so that they can access the trust on your behalf because there's a debt
Yes.
incurred. So it's kind
And
of like
that's where
that.
they've put there's got to be another trustee in there. Because it's like when you zoom in on your check and it says that you're an agent, right, to sign. There needs to be a signing agent. So,
Your agent for your person, though. So like your game piece, that capitalized name. So going in there and yelling about capitalized name doesn't work because there's a body yelling about it, and the judges just look at you. Wow, you're standing right here in front of me. Sorry.
there's a body yelling.
And that's just how they roll, right? So you can be
Yeah.
totally right about it, and they won't even care that you're right, but you're standing here. So you have to
Yeah,
do things differently if you want to go down those roads. And there are,
big
things you
time.
can do, but um, you run the risk of having warrants and all that stuff. So that it's not tiptoe through the roses or through the tulips. So yeah, so if you understand some law merchant, just basic principles of how a bill of exchange works and how your signature works and how you are liable on these things, and then and then have a little bit of trust stuff. You don't have to go down the road of the trust, but you have to understand how basic trust works and know that you have a trust, and you can maneuver pretty good in a lot of commercial endeavors.
I've said for the last, I don't know, maybe 4 years since I've really started doing this stuff in the private is that I can solve 95% of my problems in the matrix
Yeah, you
as the
can.
person. I
You
fucking
can.
go right in.
Yep.
I'm the agent. Let's go.
Yep. It's like chess and checkers, and we all think it's checkers because it's got square, black and red squares, and they're playing chess, and we go, "Hey, you can't do
That's
that.
a great, I never heard you share
I'm
that
going to
analogy.
wave my checker flag, and you need to play checkers." Well, I'm playing chess. Boom, boom, boom. Well, all you got to do is learn how to play chess. Okay, if you're going to cheat and play chess rules in a checkers game, well, then I'm going to learn chess. Boom, boom. See, it's that kind of thinking. Don't try and you can't do that. That's not a move in checkers. So what?
Again, yeah, trying to be right versus trying to win.
Yeah.
Justice versus equity. It's just it's amazing. So hey, tell everybody, well, before we wrap this up, what's going on with the Empower movement? Where are you guys at with the notices of liability? Because during the COVID era, you guys made some pretty significant strides. You have a global organization, really, people all over the world. But
No.
what's going? You guys do have, you're all
Well,
over internationally.
yeah.
You
And
basically started noticing what we did in 2014 with the notice of liability. Talk about where that's at now and what you guys are doing now.
well, we have four agendas now because we started with smart meters. Now we do vaccines, mandatory vaccines, 5G, which is a weapon, like straight up, and the spraying in the air.
And chemtrails.
Yeah, yeah. So we've got those four agendas, and we're doing them in as many countries as we can. And with all of the bills of exchange that are created, and bills of exchange, according to the Financial Administration Act in Canada, if you look up the definition of money in the very first, like in the definition section, you'll see it says negotiable instruments, and then the very next definition is negotiable instruments. You'll see bill of exchange. So a bill of exchange is money in their system.
Yeah.
Doesn't matter whether you like that or not, because I don't like it, but I know that's what it is. So we've created worldwide $25 billion in bills of exchange so far.
So who are you sending notice to for the chemtrails?
A few pilots, far and I know. I don't really know all the respondents on that one. We've only got that document for Canada. I think the U.S.
Because I showed you the nothing burger they sent me, right?
Well, you told me
500 pages of nothing
of
burger.
redaction. Yeah,
But also just front loading with the Alberta hail suppression program.
yeah,
Like this is all we're doing.
yeah. Well, they're not.
Well, yeah.
Yeah, so we dug all that up, but yeah, some of the respondents are difficult to find because it's very clandestine, but
Yeah.
some of them are
Yeah.
we can find. So and some of the manufacturers of the actual spray, etc., because they are so proud of that they putting this stuff out. So
Yeah. Yeah. One
but
more
yeah,
super.
we've had numerous people step down all worldwide. We've had three premiers in Australia and a former prime minister there. We have numerous health ministers all across the world, and we got a royal, the Queen of Denmark.
On notice.
No, she quit.
Do you think because you sent in a pile of notices to her and that made her sweat it
Because
out?
yeah, there was 14. She got 14 notices from the Denmark group, and And the thing about it is when you talk to the Danish people, because she's been there since um, for 50 something years. Like she's always our queen.
I wonder if she's a
Well,
tranny.
I don't want to go there, but
Yeah,
you can judge for
you're
yourself.
right.
But anyway, regardless of that, what was shocking about this is her mantra was, "I will never abdicate the throne. I will stay here till death." It was her thing. And then she gives an address on New Year's Eve. So two New Year's Eve ago, she goes, yeah, son, blah, 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 blah. We're gonna have a great year. And by the way, I'm out here in 2 weeks. And they were all like, did you just say you quit? Like,
That's amazing. But that's the power of commerce, man. I mean, we saw it in 2014. We sent that CEO letters. He was done the next day.
yeah.
So it is. So somebody here says in the super chats, well, okay, well, before I do that, I'll do that one before we go. But where do people go to get involved with InPower? And if they want to start sending notices to these fucking people that are doing all this terrible shit to us?
Inpowermovement.org. So it's inpowermovement.org.
Right on.
Yeah.
Somebody says here, I'll do this last one and then we'll close it up. But who would you recommend looking into when it comes to law in the U.S.? Where was the first place you went? Was it Winston Shrout?
For commerce,
For
yes.
commerce, solutions in commerce. I remember
Yeah,
those. I
but
had the
for
tapes.
law, I was more doing Canadian law, but
Yeah.
yeah. But commerce, yeah, it was Winston Schroet in Kelowna actually, and I went to
20, was it 2007 or something
I
like
think
that?
something like that, yeah.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
So when I came back from that, again, throwing stuff at the wall and seeing what sticks was my modus operandi, and this was just the next. Well, let's just see if this works, right? Because
Yeah.
I was desperate to get out of the situation I was in. I was really oppressed by this whole thing. It was not
Yep.
looking like my life was going to be under this thing, and going to court every month. And so the first thing we do on court cases that I've already had running, first commercial move I make, the judge runs off the bench. And I went,
Yeah.
oh,
That
okay.
stuck.
Well, that's not what I've ever seen before.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it just continued from there, all this strange behavior from judges to the point where Wally Opal had to go on TV and, yeah, we got to up the bonds for our hardworking judges. I'm like, yeah, because I'm out bonding you. I'm out commercializing you. I'm out moneying you because you guys
Yeah.
gave me this trust and I now know how to access it, not
Yeah.
for my own benefit, but I've got a trustee that's not you.
Yeah. And that makes me
And
freak
it
out.
just, the judges want to have nothing to do with it.
Yeah. What do you think's going on with? Do you see that video that went kind of viral of that guy saying that Mark Carney's here to seal the deal? That's why he's
I
here.
did. I did, but I didn't think that was correct.
Well, I didn't. He didn't present any evidence that that was the case. He said some good things about wills and power of attorney and stuff like that, which is all true. But he made a claim at the beginning. I find these videos kind of sneaky. Hey, it's like,
They are because I think it's a little bit misleading. But the words are in there, but you got to hear what he's saying. So it's like when he's talking about the testator, and Canada's a testator. The testator is the one who died and left a will and testament. So are you telling me Canada was alive and then and now it's dead and then it left a will and testament? Because otherwise, that word is not Canada. Like you
yeah,
can't it. You're really trying to jam something a square peg into a round hole, and
yeah.
it kind of fits, but it doesn't really.
Well, I find the thing that and I don't know about this guy who made that video. I'd never seen him before. I don't know anything about him. I find, because I went down the rabbit hole for so long, you get misled by a lot of things, is that there's ways you could, a real easy way to manipulate somebody to think that you have credibility, what you're saying is make a claim and then kind of steamroll into something else where you can just throw a bunch of random factoids out there. And then people go, oh yeah, I heard some facts, therefore it's all true. But he just kind of did a machine gun assault of a bunch of things and then talked about a few things that have no significance to the claim you made. And then people go, oh yeah, this is legit. I can't tell you how many people sent me that video. Unbelievable.
I
And I'm
know.
like, I noticed it right at the beginning. I was like, he's not really giving evidence for anything.
No, it's the thing you're describing is the testator. He used the word a few times, so he's not like hiding it. But Canada was never alive. It's not, and doesn't have a will and testament. So that's what
What's
the
he talking
testator.
about? Yeah.
Look up the word testator. It'll tell you what it is. Like Canada's not that. So
No,
everything else doesn't matter because that's the premise of it.
that's right. Yeah.
So now Carney coming over and being a part of this could be, but I would say it's more on either a straight up sale, and he's coming to figure out, okay, what are the assets? What are we going to, what are we going to charge for this thing? What have we got?
Yeah. Help to broker the deal.
Yeah. Or
Yeah.
he's here because of some kind of bankruptcy and acting as a trustee, but he's not acting in probate. There's no dead body. There's
Yeah.
no.
That's right. Where's the evidence of probate? That's what that he did. He made that claim, and then it's like, well, that doesn't make any sense.
No, it doesn't, because you have to have a dead person and number one, you have to have a dead person, and number two, there has to be a valid will and testament. Because if there's no valid will and testament, not
There's
the
no
whole thing,
probate.
yeah, the whole thing changes, right? So
Yeah.